Okay. I'd like to call Policies and Priorities Committee meeting to order for Monday, November 9th, 2020. Approval of the agenda, please. Councilor Norbury.
That all items in the Monday, November 9th Policies and Priorities Committee meeting agenda be approved as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Majinski. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
I prefer to understand you much better.
Adoption of the minutes, please. Councilor Majinski.
That the minutes of the October 13th, 2020 Policies and Priorities Committee meeting be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Lehman. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes, Council? Staff? No? Thank you. Now we'll move on to delegations. We have WildSafe BC here, a year-end review of wildlife activity in the district and the activities of WildSafe BC by Rebecca Robertson, WildSafe BC Tumbler Ridge Coordinator. Welcome.
For having me here. Joining you at my very first council meeting ever.
Excellent.
Presenter. So I just thought that I would give you a brief overview of our activities this year as well as what happened with the wildlife. So I was the coordinator in 2018 and I was back this year. If you're not familiar with you probably are familiar with WildSafe BC, but we're the provincial leader in reducing human-wildlife conflict through mostly education as well as collaboration with other groups and community solutions. So just to outline what I'm going to talk about wildlife activity and then some of the things that I did for community education, and then just a brief summary and time for questions if anyone has questions. So in 2020, you can see from the red bar graph that's representing 2020, and as per usual, black bears are the most commonly reported species in the district of Tumbler Ridge. All of these reports are coming from calls to the Conservation Officer Service, and these are uploaded to WARP, which is a publicly available program. WARP stands for the Wildlife Alert Reporting Program, and so that's where these stats are going from. So anytime you call the RAP line, the Report All Poachers and Polluters line, that's where these numbers are coming from. So black bears, it was a pretty average year for reports of those. Grizzly bears, we didn't see too many reports of those. There was a cinnamon-colored black bear hanging around town for a while, so it's likely that a few of those grizzly bear reports were actually black bear. And as for others, pretty minimal. This graph is showing just the dates that the reports were being seen. So you can see again, red is 2020. This is for black bear specifically, since that's what we're mostly seeing in town. This year, black bear reports spiked in September, and this follows the average of cross BC bears enter hyperphagia. They're just trying to get as many calories as possible for the winter. And this year was a really good crabapple crop, so that's probably part of the reason why they spiked in September this year. Last 2 years, the reports of black bears spiked in July, as you can see there. It's a little small, but I think that there could be a few explanations for that. But black bears were destroyed in July following spikes of activity in the previous 2 years, whereas this year, unfortunately, 2 more black bears were destroyed this year, but that happened in September after the spike of activity. They didn't seem to be a big problem in July and August this year. There were quite a few sightings, but they weren't really seeming to get into trouble, so yeah, that spiked in September this year. So here we have attractants that were reported associated with the reports to the Conservation Officer Service, so the vast majority of reports are just sightings. Attractant isn't noted, but in the case that attractants are noted, you can see that garbage is by far the highest. There's 12 reports. That's probably underreported. People don't want to get in trouble. Various reasons. Maybe they didn't actually see the bear, but there's evidence that a bear has access to garbage. I know I've seen that myself within the district. So 12 reports, it's a bit higher than the previous few years, so it's a little concerning. fruit trees, of course. Bears are in the crab apples. Livestock, that would be chickens. There was just one report of that. And then other would be pet food, compost, that sort of thing. So in response to that comes in WildSafe BC. So my job is to try to provide education to the community to help reduce instances of human-wildlife conflict. So one of the things that I did this year was continue the WildSafe Rangers program, and this is a really popular program in the elementary school across BC. It's delivered by WildSafe BC to elementary schools. I did presentations I did a kindergarten class to grade 5, I think was the oldest. So I presented to 10 classes, over 150 students. I did presentations in June as well as in October, and the June presentations were of course a little bit lower because a lot of kids were still learning from home. I also did the presentations via Zoom, so it's not quite the same as being in the classroom, but I think it was greatly appreciated by the teachers, and it follows the BC Learning Outcomes as well. So each child receives a WildSafe Ranger kit as well, which includes an activity book and just further learning options. And then I also presented to the Summer Reading Club, which wasn't meeting in person at the library, but they recorded me doing my presentation, and so it was given to them as well. I also did wildlife safety talks. So I partnered with the Tumbler Ridge Visitor Center as well as the Global Geopark with some of the hikes that they were leading around town. I would just give a brief, like 10, 15-minute presentation before the hikes outlining wildlife safety. And because of COVID-19, again, the groups were smaller, but everybody had really great feedback about that. We also had a BC Goes Wild event in the beginning of September, where we had 25 participants, and that was great because people were able to practice with inert bear spray. Just get the feel, put it on their hip. You see a bear, what do you do? And just walk everybody through that. So that also had great feedback. I continued the door-to-door campaign that we do with WildSafe BC. So normally we do knock on doors and try to have interpersonal conversations because those are probably more productive in a lot of ways. But this way this year, I didn't knock on doors because of the pandemic, but I delivered door hangers that had a letter to residents that outlined relevant bylaws, which of course have since changed. But this was more at the beginning of the summer, and so just trying to bring that to people's attention, I did every residence on the lower and upper benches. I continued the bin tagging program where the yellow sticker is put on people's garbage bins, just a friendly reminder not to put your garbage out the night before, which again has since changed with the changes to bylaws, and so that's going to be something to be addressed next year. Just how can we remind people to follow WildSafe practices while also keeping in mind that that the bylaws have changed and how to implement that. So, but this year it was successful. I tagged a total of over 250 bins. 85% of residents that had their bin tagged did not put it out again at all for the other times that I surveyed, so that was encouraging. You can also see from the red on that bar graph, those were the bins that were improperly clipped, and unfortunately, we see a fair bit of that, and I can only tag bins that are put out on the curb the night before. I can't go onto people's properties after dark to look at if their bins are clipped properly, but unfortunately a lot of bins are not clipped properly, and this renders these bear-resistant bins useless if they're not clipped. They're just like a regular garbage can. So fortunately a lot of the instances of bears accessing garbage is because people are not clipping their bins, so that's something to look at going forward too. Regardless if people put it out the night before, if it's not clipped properly, it's not going to be. It was encouraging to see less bins being put out the night before. People seemed pretty responsive to that. A lot of, actually, just a side note, a lot of people too, I think, who are new to the community, they just don't even think about it. I know moving up from the lower mainland and the island, it wasn't really something I thought about a lot, but of course it makes sense that we live in wildlife country, there's bears around here. A new program this year was Business Pledge. 6 businesses signed it, and there's a few more that I've worked with that are kind of halfway there that will be finished next year. So all of these businesses have agreed to follow WildSafe practices by keeping their solid waste in bear-resistant cans. In Tumbler Ridge, this is kind of a neat program to just recognize what businesses are already doing, because most businesses are following these plans, whereas in a lot of places in BC, this isn't the case. So businesses are going to have to go through a lot of steps to kind of meet the requirements. But here, I think this is a way that we can just recognize what a lot of businesses are already doing. As well, there's a new initiative, the Bear Camping Initiative, and this kind of just got started in September, so I didn't complete it with any campgrounds, but I did talk to one campground that's interested in pursuing. And this is especially, again, for people who come from out of town, to just make them aware of, you know, bears have definitely accessed food and garbage in campgrounds around Tumbler Ridge. So this is a way that WildSafe BC can support the campgrounds in having a really effective way to address those problems. Other outreach that I did, you may have seen I wrote a few newspaper articles about relevant wildlife issues, human-wildlife conflict issues. Social media, our Tumbler Ridge WildSafe Facebook page is a really effective messaging tool, especially this year with COVID-19 when I couldn't make a lot of face-to-face contact with people. We had the posts that I did reached over 34,000 instances that people would see a post, so that's really effective. And we have over 500 followers as well, so that's a great way to get messaging out there. And then of course there's the barren area signs that I put up and took down throughout the season. I try to just put them in general places that people are going to see them and not be too specific, because a bear can get across town within 20 minutes if it was motivated. So just put them in high traffic areas. So yeah, that's a really broad look at my activities this year. Again, garbage and fruit trees are of course the top attractants. That's pretty much across all of BC, not unique to Tumbler Ridge, but something to just keep in mind to try to prevent human-wildlife conflict from reaching a point where it could get out of control. And then of course, as I mentioned, there's the changes to the bylaws as well as the garbage and recycling schedules that will have to be addressed for next year, but we'll see how that goes next year in May. My last slide was just thanking our sponsors, which includes the District of Tumbler Ridge and the BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change and the BC Conservation Foundation.
Perfect.
Thanks very much. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for coming in. That was an excellent update. Council, any questions? Councilor Majinski?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Thank you very much for the presentation. I had one question about the reporting on just the garbage and how high it was spiked. Does that include just residential, or do you have stats on our waste management facility, the golf course, and our campsites at all? Do you get call-ins, or do you have to have a jurisdiction to go out to those areas and see where these bears are and put up the barren area signs there?
I do. That's part of the district, so that is part of my purview with the program. Those stats about bears accessing garbage include the entire district, commercial, residential, everything. I think most of them are residential, but I don't have the data of access or where specifically it was accessed. If you go to WARP, some of the reports are associated with a specific geographic point on the map, but most of them, they just kind of center in the middle of town, and they don't report where exactly that was coming from.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Thank you, Ms. Robertson, for coming in and giving your presentation. It's important to continually make people aware of how to be bear safe and wild safe in our community, as we have so many new people coming to town. For a lot of us, like I remember in elementary school, we were taught wild safe, so it's just ingrained, but not everyone is from these areas.
Totally.
So, I had a question regarding the garbage reports, because as you know, we changed our policy this year to allow garbages to be put out earlier. So my question is sort of regarding the bins. Like, do you know if these bins that had bears trying to get in, do you know if they were clipped, unclipped? Have any of the information?
No, I don't have that information. The bins that we have are certified bear resistant. They've been tested at the facility in Kamloops, and so my assumption, well, bear resistant certification means that they've been filled with salmon or something tasty, given to some bears in this enclosure, and then if it stands 1 hour without bears accessing that, they're highly motivated and hungry, then it's certified bear resistant. So I would guess that those bins where bears were accessing garbage were not clipped. Or, you know, even I consider improperly clipped even if it has one clip, because that's not how it's built or tested to be used, right? It's both clips. A bear, super strong, if it can get that angle to rip off the lid, it can probably do that with just the one clip. So my guess would be that they were improperly clipped.
Thank you. Any other questions, Council? Councillor Howe?
Yeah, I have one bit of a concern with some tactics that you guys are utilizing in town, and that has to do with the bear and area signs. So I've received a lot of feedback from members of the community that they find that the bear and area signs are, they've kind of lost their effect. You said it in your presentation right there that you go out, you put them out in areas that the bears kind of are in just for a visualization. A lot of people looked at those signs as if, yeah, there has been a bear in this area, they're making us aware, but then that sign stays up for weeks at a time because it's in a high traffic area so people can see it. I think that maybe you guys need to look at doing something there where instead of putting those signs out that people, they lose their effect. You know, it's you see them everywhere in town and they're never in an area again where the bear is at. So to me, I don't know if maybe those signs should go up for a shorter duration. Perhaps they go up once the bear has not been in that area for 24 hours. You pull them down and put them in a different area. I mean, I don't know how much you're in the community during the summer, but the fact that the residents of Tumbler Ridge have discussed it at length, one of the places I've heard is on Facebook as well, that the signs aren't effective. They don't watch them anymore. They don't look at them anymore. So I don't know, just a bit of criticism for you if you guys could look at doing something with that. Put them out a little, you know, and take them down a little more often, or in areas that the bears are in.
Okay, yeah, I would kind of guess that if people are noticing that they're still there, that maybe they're still noticing that the sign is there, but definitely point taken. And yeah, it is tough because Tumbler Ridge is so small, you know, if I put it at the dead end of one road, like maybe 3 people will see it, so is that even worth the time? I don't know. But you're totally right that just leaving it in one place probably isn't, I don't know, people, yeah. I think that would be fair for people to just assume that there are always bears in the community. Just sometimes people are reporting it on Facebook and then everybody knows. But yeah, totally.
The thing is, to me, for the effectiveness, if I walk to the end of that dead end road that I've never ever seen that sign there, then all of a sudden that sign is there and that's where I do my daily walk with my dog and that sign is there today. That makes me pay attention. I turn around and go to a different area.
Totally.
If it's actually in this area and I didn't know it was here. I wasn't on Facebook. I just came back from holidays. Didn't know the bears at this dead end road, and I'm the one of 3 people who walk down here. So I'll go to a different area. That's kind of my thought process. Even if it's not getting the visibility that you guys want to have, it's more effective that it's hitting your target audience.
Totally, and definitely on like higher traffic trails and everything.
Yeah, good point. Any other questions, Council? Yeah, and just for myself, Rebecca, we did take your letter into consideration when we were discussing that policy and bylaw change, and we do appreciate your opinion on that, absolutely. And I think this was a trial run, to be honest with you, and I think your information and stats next year are really going to tell us if it is effective or if we do need to make another change. So we do appreciate your involvement in the community, and thank you very much for your presentation today.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thanks
Thank you.
for your time.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Recommendation, please. Councillor Majinski.
No, that all the items in November 9th, 2020 consent agenda be moved for information.
Seconder. Councillor Kukalka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Council would like to bring up any items from the consent agenda for discussion? Councillor Howe?
Yeah, the only one that's on our agenda, COVID19 Safe Restart grants for local government. So just like a bit of an overview.
For discussion? Yep. seconder. Councillor Majinski. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a bit of an overview of how the $827,000 comes into the community. The BC government write us a check for $827,000 and we're good, free and clear, and we just get to spend it wherever we want now. Is that?
No, there's a pretty substantial list and follow-up procedure in the agenda here during the letter. Ms. Thompson, can you clarify this a little bit more on the grant, please?
Thank you, Member Tran, through Council. So, yeah, the BC government went through and they have created a program for COVID-19 Restart. So, based on our population, Tumbler Ridge received that $827,000. So we will be getting a check within the next few days. So we do have to have eligible costs. We haven't seen anything on how we need to report it, but we do know what our eligible costs will be, and that is on the letter that came from them. So addressing our revenue shortfalls, facility reopening and operating costs, emergency planning and response costs, and bylaw enforcement, any technology costs to upgrade so that we can, still get everything out to the community and what we need for that. And then other related costs as well as services for vulnerable persons. So we do know that those are considered eligible costs. There isn't a whole lot of detail in the letter that these are eligible costs, then we will have to report it to the government, and we will keep reporting until we have used up that $827,000.
Councillor Howe.
So can we present to the government the amount of money that we've paid out, that we think we've paid out, or our argument of what we've paid out from March until now? Like, are we able to say, geez, we've come up with $627,000 and stuff, and now we're going to spend the other $200,000 going forward? Or is this, like, from this point going forward? I guess what I'm getting at is the government trying to get us to spend our tax dollars so that they can reimburse it with this money, or is this for money that we've already spent that will be reimbursed?
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. We don't know those details yet. It is COVID restart, so we may be able to bring it from when COVID started and everything shut down.
Okay.
But at this time, we don't know. I have a feeling it's from the beginning going forward and continuing on.
Yeah, that would be my thoughts on it. If they're mentioning revenue shortfalls, it's going to be right from March, I believe, and as well as the reopening costs and the costs for protective equipment from the fire department as well. So I would say from March on. Councillor Howe.
So we passed a motion early on in March for our budgeting that we would decrease the amount of business taxes by 100%. 100%. So would that be an eligible amount that we would receive back out of this grant?
I don't believe so, as that was a council initiative. But Ms. Thompson, do you have an opinion on that?
Thank you, Member Tran. So at this time, unless it was something we could fit in as other related costs, which we don't really have a definition on, I don't believe it would be, because it doesn't follow in any of the eligible costs.
But to me, it looks very open-ended. I've read the letter, and I mean, like, we're all just kind of putting our hands up. I don't know if it's going to work or whatnot, but I would implore staff to look into that. I mean, that's the exact wording we used of it. We said, because of COVID, we are going to reduce our costs by this much to give our businesses a chance to survive. So this is an excellent opportunity for you guys to put one thing on the table for the government and say, we decreased our business taxes by this much to help keep our businesses going. Boom, you got $500,000, goes right back into our coffers that you guys don't got to track or look for or do anything with. So I'd employ you to try to look at that option. So that was the whole point of why we did this. So
I agree, but I don't believe it's a cost. I believe it's a revenue shortfall that council decided to
that's
go.
what's in the letter though too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's possible. Definitely something to look into. Any other discussion, council? Okay, moving on. Sorry, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Through to staff, will you be coming up with a report to council on this, on money spent, or how this money will be put through to the different topics here, Or will this be something discussed with council together?
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. So we are doing a COVID impact of what it has done with our revenue spent. We are planning to bring that to council early in the new year. So in conjunction with that, when we actually know what our shortfalls are, then we will be bringing it back to see where we are.
Go ahead.
Okay, also, just recently we brought up, and it says in here like computer and electronic technology. One service that we provide to the residents is having our council meetings put online and already looking on upgrades to make that easier. So is that something already that we could look at because of this money?
Ms. Thompson.
Yes, it would be. It is underneath that for technology upgrades.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion, council? Okay, moving on to reports. 7.1, residential lot expansion. A report dated November 9th, 2020 by the Director of Economic Development and Tourism, providing the follow-up information that was requested by council at October 19th, 2020 council meeting relating to the query made by a Tumbler Ridge resident about the purchase of land from the district and to the possible encroachment of another resident onto district land. I'd like to move this for discussion. Seconder, please. Councillor Howe, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Put the recommendation on the floor that council direct administration to pursue the sale of P2 parkland to the owner of lot 27, plan 29398 DL 3164, and that council stipulate, and two, that council stipulate that the purchaser be responsible for all costs associated with the lot expansion, including but not limited to survey, registration, and zoning amendments.
Seconder. Councillor Gorkowka, discussion? Councillor Majinski?
So my concern is this going to come back from every single resident that wants to do a lot expansion within the district of Tumbler Ridge? And if so, how much staff time is going to be eaten up on this every single time this happens? And does it come back to council every single time as well? Is it going to be presently set that every time somebody would like to have a certain amount, is it going to be up to their discretion how much land they're actually going to ask for? And then going forward, if we wanted to go into a new area of building, is that going to affect how we plan and going forward to make these lots adjust going on the backside of all, green spaces?
I can make an assumption on that, but my opinion, without a policy in place, it would be a case-by-case basis. So, Ms. Thompson, would you care to respond to that question?
Thank you. So when we did, we had done a report back up staff had done a report in 2016 with the same, premise with selling lots, and it was at that time, on a case-by-case basis. And so we did get this request and brought it forward. And yeah, a case-by-case, unless we have a very strong policy, it would have to be dealt with case-by-case. And we'd have to make sure that anything we do have in it, we have as much detail as possible for council to look at it. But at this time, case-by-case.
And each case would be coming to council as well?
It would need to, yes.
Okay. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. We keep seeing the interest from residents looking to expand their lots. I think, it's up to us to look at this and look at the cases, but it's also something that we need to do is finish off and update our official community plan, and then actually, like you had mentioned, getting a policy in place for this. So at this point, I would probably have to vote against the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Howe?
Yeah, so maybe I don't understand your reasoning why you would vote against this. This is the whole point. We put this forward. We have direction from 2016 that we gave the staff that they directed that any future resident application to purchase municipal land be dealt with on a case-by-case basis rather than a district-wide basis. So we already decided that back in 2016 that this is the way that we were going to do it because of all the debate and the discussion that we had of the day of it would be too encompassing to set up something that is what's good for one is good for all, because there could be a slew of different problems with, whether there's a district right of way or a power line, or do we need access, or I don't like the aesthetics of that. The whole idea of this was to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Now, we've had one person come in, right? Maybe after this one person comes in and we actually complete the process and go through with it, others will follow suit. I've talked to probably 20, 25 people in the last couple of weeks that have said they have a serious interest in purchasing land from the district of Tumbler Ridge. The benefits in this completely outweigh any of the downsides of it. You get immediate revenue to the district for the sale of the land. Immediately. They give us cash for the land. You get an ongoing yearly reoccurring additional revenue from taxation on the increased value of the property. The value of the property goes up because they purchase more land. We collect more tax dollars every year forever on that piece of land. The potential to create jobs. There's surveying costs. There's a minimum of two surveying companies that I already know of in town that have said that this could create employment for them. There's land clearing, brush cutting, tree falling, new fencing, shop builds, heavy equipment operator jobs, clearing land, augering holes, gravel sales, material, and removal and hauling. There's spin-off revenue to local businesses. There's lumber sales for fences and shops, and equipment rental to clear and build fences and shops. This allows the DTR and bylaw to provide an option to homeowners who are presently encroaching on town property, effectively making bylaw's job easier and less stress. It allows for easier enforcement. Our bylaw goes up and says to somebody, you've got a shed and you've got a car that's outside of your property. There is a process now in the district of Tumbler Ridge where you can buy this piece of land. If you don't want to go through that process, you have to remove it and put it back on your own property. So it makes bylaw's job easier, it takes time off of staff. Has the potential to reduce the DTR to liability and costs for things like danger trees, drainage, water issues, thus lowering our operating budget for things like danger tree removal. It offers exciting options and choices for both homeowners and people looking to purchase a house in Tumbler Ridge, increasing our population. We've got cookie cutter homes in Tumbler Ridge, and the lots go along with it. I mean, proof in point, I have 2 spare lots. I bought 2 spare lots next to my house. Mayor Bertrand bought a spare lot next to his house. Councillor Kirby, you have 2 lots on your home. Councillor Madzinski, the land that you purchased, you could buy the piece next door to your place at some point. You know, proof in point is a lot of people want it, and we should give them the opportunity to do it. There's very, very, very few negatives to this if we look at them on a case-by-case basis. That's why we made the decision in 2016 to do so. So I think it's time for us to continue forward with this. Let somebody try it, go through the process and see how it goes. This is a really low-risk area that this person is looking for. It's up behind the museum that we had really no idea what we were going to do with an old schoolyard that we turned into part of it into a vegetable garden that turned out to be pretty successful in the community. And these people want to carve a small piece off the corner of that. It's very low risk to us. What's the worst thing that could happen in there? That if I just don't see any benefit or any downfall for us to do this. I mean, let's get the process going. Let's let staff run through it. Let them come back with us and show us this was the good points of doing this, this was the bad points of doing this, and then we'll know better for the next one in the future. This person actually wants to buy it. I think we should go ahead with it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Madzinski.
Mayor Bertrand. So when an individual purchases a piece of property, they know what they're getting themselves into. When they want to expand on it, and Councillor Howard said that we've all purchased land, but yeah, those are all adjacent lots. That's not land going in behind, encroaching onto green spaces. The reason that we have cookie cutter lots is for sightline, for the visual aspect of it. So if somebody is not following the proper enforcement by bylaw, and they go behind the green spaces, and there's piles of vehicles and ATVs and boats in the green space, how do you know if they own that property or not? The reason they have these sight lines is so that they can see behind and know that there's not a bunch of stuff piled in the back 40. So then who's liable for it? Are the weeds? It's on district's property. So that's one idea. And the aesthetics of it. Like even in here it says down by Mahon and Palliser down there, and the implication there is Modi, and because they own that part of the highway there, But if we have people expanding out closer to that embankment, that'll be all visible from the highway. And that's one thing that when they designed the district, the entire thing is they wanted to have green space outlining the entire town so that it didn't look like we had fences like in a lot of communities where you see trailer parks and fencing and everything else and open space. We wanted to have it so it looks secluded and is as a windbreak and has a bit of a privacy. And that's why the lots were designed the way they were. So I think it's more of an aesthetic thing. And if, yeah, maybe if you wanted to extend the lots, everybody should have equal opportunity, because like, what if somebody has an extra 20 feet and then they're blocked off? And it's so very similar to how we did the amalgamation of back lots. That'll happen in the future as well. So my only concerns is being able to have the give and take. So if somebody wanted to buy the back lot, they're losing potentially land that they should have initially been entitled to.
Okay. Councillor Kalka?
Yeah, so I remember this discussion in 2016, and some of those words were actually spoken, Councillor Majinski, but I do think it's time to see this. I also think it's time that we have staff reach out. I mean, it came up on Facebook, use social media as the one. The Mackenzie already has a policy in place. You need to see that. When we talked in 2016, I'm not sure if Mackenzie had a policy in place. But I don't say Mackenzie does, but it is said on social media they do. Don't know, I didn't call them. That might be something after the fact that we can ask staff to contact. Maybe it's something worth looking at. Councilor Majinski, you mentioned that, well, the reason these lots this way is so we have sight lines. I'm not going to pick on the owner, but if you look on the map that's been issued to us by staff, and it follows the red line around. If you look around the red line over by the museum building, there's something in that map that probably shouldn't be there. So if there's sight lines so bylaw can see the stuff that's not on people's property lines, it looks like to me we have an issue. So to me, by having this resident come forward, ask us, go through staff, maybe not us, it's in front of us today, about they want to extend their lot for whatever reason. Maybe they need more space for gardening, or who knows. I actually did talk to the resident. But if you look further down to the right, there's someone with dwellings on that. To me, that looks like it's on our property line. And there's lots of that in this community. So Councillor Howe mentioned that if this process goes through, people have a person to reach out to, ask them how it went, they can tell them the things that they had problems with, the things that worked really good with the district, things that they found out that they should have done differently before they came. Maybe this individual that's further down the map comes forward and asks to buy a piece of land that they already have dwellings on that can be taxed. Right now, they're not taxed. Just being honest. That's what it is. Those are not taxed. They're not on their property. They're probably not assessed. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't live there, but I'm just saying that's how I would do it. I mean, that's how B assessment does it. So I support the motion on the floor.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and so Councillor Mazinski, make a good point with the visual aspects and the aesthetics of the lots, and I can understand where you're coming from, but the beauty of us looking at this on a case-by-case basis, if somebody were to say, I want to buy that piece of land out behind the vegetable garden, or the whatever, what's the proper name of it? Community gardens, right? And I want to cut down all those trees back there so I can put my fence right next to them. We have the choice to say to them, listen, that won't pass through council. What you need to do is you need to leave a buffer of trees there. So we're not even going to sell you all the way up that you can cut all those trees down. We're only comfortable with probably somewhere in that 20-foot range. And so we still have the decision on a case-by-case basis. If something is going to go in, they're going to mow all the trees down, or they're going to build too close to the Modi or out to the highway, and we don't like that they're going to put a shed out there. We have a choice that we can say to them, those trees have to remain in that area. We can put restrictions in on what we want to do. Right now, we don't have that in place. We have places all over Tumbler Ridge that there's fire pits and woods and sheds and cars and trucks and campers and you name it, all outside of our property. And we have to give bylaw an opportunity to be able to say, hey, you either got to move this stuff in or you buy the piece behind you. And that is the whole point of doing it on a case-by-case basis. We don't have 25 people coming in looking to do this and going to make our lives really difficult and too much time on staff. We've got one right now. Let's go through the process in a really low-risk area and try it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norbury, then Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So with this issue, I know previously we spoke about it, and I thought we should have a policy in place because it should be a relatively simple process for a landowner to come in and take on the work themselves, because I think that's what, landowners should do. It shouldn't be on the whole to pay for the individual's expansion. But I think with some of the conversation going on, we might be painting a little bit of a rosier picture than it is. I mean, if currently the system now is, if you're encroaching on green space, don't say anything. We're all doing it. Well, they're all doing it. You know, moving on. You know, it's happening, right? Like, you know, I've spoken with residents, and they're saying everybody on my street, they're backing up a little bit into that green space. Now, if we do start selling those extra parcels of land, our bylaw will need to step it up, and we'll need to start cracking down on these people that have kind of had, you know, don't ask, don't tell type feeling around the community. So I think that would actually create more work for our bylaw, and it'll get more people upset in like, hey, I've been doing this for 15 years, what's the deal now? Because you guys want to make more money? You want to make $5 a year on your property taxes? You know, yeah, so, you know, I don't know exactly how we sit on it. When we come to vote, I'll have to make a decision, but I mean, this isn't as like, this is a home run hit for us. Like, there are some issues here.
Okay, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. You know, I look at this drawing, I think there shouldn't be an issue with this, and as if we're doing one-offs. But what we haven't figured out is future, when we have someone else come in, is what are our checkpoints to say that your property does not fall within, you know, the limits, because we've set a precedent now. Like, does it interfere with the sight line? Does it interfere with future development? Does it interfere with future park expansions? Those are the questions. You know, it'd be easy to say, yeah, this looks great. I want to do this for this resident. It works on paper and visually it works. But then how do we address the next issue and the next issue? And that's where I'm having an issue with, is that when the next person comes in and council says, no, that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? What's your policy? That's the problem that I kind of get hung up on. Even though I'm behind this, how do we do it properly?
That's my issue with it as well. I'm not in favor of the motion on the floor at the moment because we don't have any structure in place. I think we're putting the cart before the horse in this sense. Yes, we do have the one application, and I am sympathetic to many landowners in the community. They're small lots, and I totally agree with that. The problem is I don't believe council is in the position to make a decision on every single one-off without a policy or structure in place. And I think we need to have that in place, as well as update our OCP to incorporate this type of expansion. So I will be voting against this motion. Councillor Lehman, and then Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to agree with Councillor Norbury and Councillor Kirby, and you as well. We need some kind of policy because it'll eliminate if we have restrictions or we have guidelines. This is where you're able to do it. This is where you're not able to do it. So that if people come in here, or if they want to apply to buy a piece of property, we have to have guidelines so that they know that this is doable and this isn't doable. We can go on this. We can do it on a case by case, but I think that's the wrong way to go about it. We have to have a policy in place so that people know beforehand what the restrictions are and what they can and cannot do, and where they can actually buy the property or not.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howe.
So a couple of things there, Councillor Norbury. This is not an opportunity for us to make money. That's just a benefit of this. That's one of the things as I was getting at there. I'm not saying that that's the only reason. This, more than anything, is to benefit the residents of the community, to give them options and opportunities in a place that they move to. That's the beauty of it for me. And we went over this issue in 2016 and talked about setting up a policy to do this, and we chose not to. We chose to go on a one-off basis. That's exactly what it says in the notes we got here. That we directed future resident applications to purchase municipal land be dealt with on a case-by-case basis rather than a district-wide basis. I understand the concerns of other councillors that there may be other issues around, but that's the beauty of the one-by-one cases. And we may set a precedent that is not legally binding. Setting a precedent that is not legally binding is completely different than what may be the fate of your political futures on sitting up here. That's two different things here. If you decide to give a lot to one person and not to another person, for whatever reason you have in an area, you didn't like the sight lines, or you don't like that it's too close to a power line or whatever, that is not a legal binding opinion. That is something that you have to sit on politically, and that's a complete difference. So don't say that it's that's something that you make your decision on, because it isn't. That's for you to protect your own political futures, is what you're doing there. So what I'm getting at there is, if a guy comes in and we don't like, for whatever reason, we can give him reasons why his lot expansion doesn't work, but why this person's lot expansion did work. And that's totally fine and legal for us to do. We can't go to court over that. It's all it does is it gives you an opportunity to not look good in the public eye. And to me, this is an opportunity for us to do that, so.
I tend to disagree, though. I think,
Information that our staff gave us.
thank you. May I talk now?
Sure.
Thank you. I tend to disagree.
Though you just always butt in, right? So.
That is the right I have, yes. Councillor Howell? Thank you.
Yep.
I have no idea what I was going to say. Councillor Kirkowka?
Thank you, Richard. So I was going to mention some of the things Councillor Howell's already mentioned. He mentioned about how we dealt with this in 2016, and I'm fine with the policy as well. I want to make that known. I think there should have been, and we actually turned that down in 2016. I mean, I'm not going to get into who voted what, but it was turned down by council today. So yeah, we had an opportunity to do a policy back then. I guess the question I have to staff, it doesn't say it's been done yet, but it's just below that. It says administrations intend to incorporate these requirements into the upcoming official community plan updates. Has that ever been done?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you. The official community plan is on our radar and our priority list for updating. I don't believe there is changes to it. The plan is that if we move forward with it, that it would be incorporated into that. And then also the land sale bylaw policy, land sale policy as well would need to be updated prior to moving ahead with this.
Thank you. Councillor Kirkowka, follow up?
I follow.
So what I'm asking though is it actually says staff was going to incorporate it. That's from 2016.
As far as I
So all
understand,
I'm asking there, Your Worship, is was it done from previous staff? So I'm not sure this staff. I'm just curious if it was captured as a add-in.
action item.
When it was directed by council today.
As far as I understand, the OCP hasn't been updated since 2012, I believe.
Okay, enough.
So it likely is an action item when the update comes, but it hasn't been done yet.
Thank you.
Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Council Howell hit on a point about the one-offs, and I think it brings back why the importance of having a policy before we move forward, and that it prevents us from saying no to someone because of how we feel about them, right? Like it's now, if this is a policy, if you fit this criteria, if you're in this area as it pertains to our official community plan, then these are the green lights. I would hate for anyone to not be denied the ability to expand their lot because of political feelings towards an individual. And I think that we could rise above that, but I'd hate for that to ever be, thrown out there.
Yeah, I agree. Any other discussion? Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not really worried about my political future. I'm more worried about treating everybody the same. And I don't want to, I really have nothing against this expansion. I think it might even look better. But the thing is, we have to treat everybody the same. And granted, sometimes it is case by case, but you try to treat everybody the same. Some places, you're not going to be able to do that. It's just not going to be feasible. But that's the primary concern, is so that everybody's dealt with equally.
I agree. Okay, any other discussion? Call the question on the motions. All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Okay, can I ask staff to formulate a motion for us that we can continue on whichever way you guys want to do it, so that we can sell lots?
Yeah, I was going to bring forward a recommendation. I'd like to move that council direct staff to develop a draft policy for lot expansions and how that would implement our OCP. Seconder, please. Councillor Majinski, discussion. Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing that forward. I think it's a good way to go forward with this, being more equal, more concise, more in line with what we're looking to do here. And when I bring up my points about the aesthetics and yeah, the individual that came in with their design, yeah, it aesthetically looks good, but I'm not going to vote in favor every time just because of aesthetics. I guess that's not what this is about. So that's why I vote against it, because there has to be more than just one thing that's good on why they should have this extra land. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Councilor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think, again, a policy is the way we need to go, because then we can sort of map out our community and where this is feasible, where it's not. You know, like if we do a case-by-case basis, you know, where we're doing the work every time over and over again. If we have have everything identified, ready to go, it should be a quick, here you go. And within this policy, we can let people know right off the hop, like, there's a lot of costs associated here, guys. You know, like there's survey costs. Like, I had no idea it's going to cost $6,000 to survey your property. I mean, these are all high estimates, but I bet if those costs associated are laid out before a person, you know, they'll adjust accordingly. So I like the idea of a policy, and then it can be community.
Okay. Call the question on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right. Question and answer period. We do have a gallery this evening, so if you would like to pose a question to myself, does need to be in regards to tonight's agenda, please. Please.
Okay, so I'm the person that sent the letter asking for the extension of my lot. First off, I love the comments about everybody being treated equally, because since no one cares that there's sheds and vehicles and everything on the lot, I'm just going to build something out behind my house, and nobody's going to care because that's equal, because it's all over Tumbler Ridge. I looked at houses that they actually said to me, well, the shed's actually built on town land. It's not really on my lot, but they don't care. So I thought I would do the proper steps and try and get you guys to do a policy where people can do this legally. And I totally get all your comments and everything else, but I don't see where Tumbler Ridge has gone forward in years. I looked at the bylaws when I was doing all of this, and it was like 2012, I think, was some of the stuff. And so I just don't think, I think you said it there, Daryl, that 2016 you guys had said we should do a policy, or we should do a case, but nothing follows through. So I'm quite willing to wait and do this again, but I wanted to do it now because I'm going to spend probably 10 grand building a fence next year. That I thought, okay, I'm going to go see if I can buy the extra land so I can plant some more trees, put a garden, whatever. And it's interesting that you guys really don't want to do that. So I walk all over town. My first suggestion would be, you're not going to pass this or sell people land if you don't care that there is people parking on their lawns, people parking their sheds and their campers and their boats and their everything out behind their house. Walk behind Wolverine. I mean, I used to own a house on Wolverine. I know where the lot line is, and I know how many things are behind the lot line. So my suggestion to council would be, you're doing a great job. I love the town. I love the green space. That was never my intention to take away the green space. But I really think you guys need to maybe move forward with getting people into the town, and yet not everybody can do it. I agree. And if I could have bought the lot next door to me, I probably would have, but I love the house, I love the location. So I thought this would be the best thing. So I really implore you to please do a policy, because I will be back to ask again. And I hope you can have it done in 6 months, because I really don't want to wait to build my fence.
So is there a question for us? I definitely respect your comments, and I do.
The question is,
Yes.
Are you going to actually do a policy so that I'm not the only person coming in here to do this? There is lots of people in Tumbler Ridge that want to do this.
Absolutely, and that's the motion that we passed tonight,
Okay.
to bring it, for staff to bring us a draft policy. Yeah.
Okay. And the other comment I had for Mr. Norbury.
Just questions, please.
Oh.
Just questions.
Question?
Yes, please.
Okay. My question is, the costs
that would be included with all of this, is there a concern to council that the people that want to buy the lot are going to pay all of that?
That is the intention at the moment, for the surveying and that sort of thing, yeah.
So basically what council would need to do then is just have a minimum price for the, or a price per
Per square meter,
square meter, and then a cost for the town people to do
the administration part of it.
administration, like $2,000 or whatever, and then you pay for all the other costs. Is that correct?
No, the landowner pays for the
No,
cost.
that's what I meant.
Yes, yes.
There.
Councilor Norbert.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand, and thank you for your question. I think it's just important to outline where responsibilities lie on both sides of the table, because without a policy in place, there may be expectations from residents to say that the district needs to take on all of these costs, and I think from the district's perspective is that the expectation needs to be clear that it is up to the individual resident who's looking to purchase this property to incur those costs rather than the community.
I agree. I have one more question. Is bylaw going to start finding all these people for stuff that's not on their own land? That's right.
We'll be looking at that, yes. Councilor Krokowka?
I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Ms. Schoenig, did you have a
The
question?
only question I was gonna ask is if bylaw was gonna look into all the sightlines, then if sightlines are so important, then I want all the sheds, fire pits, trucks, trailers, sheds, fences, all of them removed in Tumbler Ridge. I have my wood shed in my yard, yet I'm on a green belt. So I got sightline to sightline in my yard, and I don't think it's really fair. So my question is, you're not gonna allow us to purchase more property, are you going to implement bylaw to take all these sheds, trailers, fire pits, hot tubs, dog kennels off of public land then?
Yeah, I don't think council is not willing to sell these properties. I think what we're asking for is structure in place so that we don't have to put council's opinions involved in every case-by-case basis. Not everybody's going to be able to do this in the community, so it's not fair for everybody to share the cost of it as well. But without any structure in place, there's some areas in town where somebody could possibly create a 4-acre lot if they could, if there's enough space in the back. There's also an issue with provincial land as well.
That wasn't my question.
Yes, so, yes, I did answer that question. It was the same question as the previous as well.
They're going to find them.
Yeah.
So if you find them and they don't move it, are you going back the next month to find them again?
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
It's a bylaw issue, so we'll be looking into it.
Just curious.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening, too. It's nice to see a gallery again. Okay, a resolution to close. Recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with the Community Charter, Section 91E and J as follows. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And J, information that is provided or information that, if it were presented in a document, would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Seconder, please. Councilor Krokowka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 10-minute recess, please.